Hey everybody, this is Susan Kokinda. I hope you subscribe, comment, and like Crypto Rich.
Hey Susan, hey Alex, hey Tom. Thank you so much for our monthly videos. I just love these, learn so much. It's Friday the 21st of November. I have pressed the recording button at 7:36 p.m. so people know, because things move so quickly. The news cycle is so fast and there's so much. And I'm going to start with you, Tom, because you posted something about Trump's 28-point peace plan being leaked. And I was intrigued by your comment because you said, one, you think it's been leaked possibly by the Europeans, but also it's an assault on NATO and the European Union, that it would lead to the end of them, which, by the way, I'm all in favor of. So please, Tom. And I'm going to have all the links to your stuff, all of that in the description below.
All right. Well, thank you, Rich. I'll make it quick. Yeah, go look at the 28 points of the plan and then realize that this is a classic bit of good diplomacy where everybody gives up a little bit and everybody gets something. The focus is on ending the war and rebuilding Ukraine. And guess who has to put money on the table? Right. If you look at it, the $100 billion that the Europeans are, the Russians are going to lose that $100 billion that were seized, but they're going to have to invest it in all the stuff that they want to invest with the United States anyway. So that translates roughly into the Bering Strait tunnel and railway and all of that development of Western Russia, Eastern Russia. Whereas then the Europeans have to go in and match the $100 billion that they stole to rebuild Ukraine. Now, you take the war in Ukraine off the table. It's actually not that difficult. You take the war in Ukraine off the table, and all of a sudden there's no raison d'etre for NATO. There's no raison d'etre for the military budgets that they want to spend money on. There's no threat from Russia expanding if everybody does what they're supposed to do vis-a-vis this peace deal. Now, once that happens, the average Europeans can then stop worrying about whether or not the Russians are going to come across and invade Poland and then Germany and then sweep in, which is all nonsense. But it's still a thing, and everybody, and including global capital, can now no longer worry about tail risks from false flags, World War III going ballistic, and everybody can go, oh, Europe's balance sheet is terrible.
Oh wow. Oh wow! And then
everybody refocuses their attention. Remember, your focus determines your reality. If you're focused on, oh my God, are these people dumb enough to start World War III? Then that's what freezes capital. Okay, and that's been my argument for 4 years now. That everything that the European Union and the UK have done has been to stop the capital flight out of Europe desperately. The yield curve control. Every time I get geeky about bond yields or bond spreads or any of this stuff, I'm always focused on the same thing, which is how can the European Union stop capital from fleeing Europe and going where they don't want it to go? Because all of their power is soft power at this point. The European Union's power is regulatory, right? The British power is all soft power through ancient relationships and money flows through City of London. This peace deal and Ukraine itself, it ends the way it has been laid out here. Forget it. All of those things are fundamentally attacked. And then the people of Europe can then turn around and go, yeah, we've been betrayed. Because it's not like the United States is saying we won't be a part of enforcing the peace. As a matter of fact, the United States has now been made the guarantor of peace between Russia and Europe over Ukraine.
Got it. Thank you, Tom. Absolutely.
That to me, it was just so obvious. Within five minutes of reading it, I think I'm like, oh, that's obvious. So,
well, yeah. I read it and I thought, great, I'll get to ask Tom because I can't see it. But really well distinguished.
Fair enough.
This is why I have you on and why I follow you and listen to your stuff. So thank you so much. Susan, do you want to build on that or comment?
Well, yeah, I think what's really important about it, again, for what is it, the 15th or 20th time, people were getting all wobbly in the knees about Donald Trump. And, he's not going to be able to do this, or he doesn't want to do this, or he's sold out to the neocons or the Zionists or whatever of the day is, and there quietly, his administration was hammering out the details of this. And again, no leaks. Nobody knew about this. And I think the administration leaked it to begin to get the talking points out there. Also happening at the same time that the corruption noose is tightening around Zelensky and his closest allies. So, I mean, it's pretty clear, he's being given an offer he can't refuse, I think.
Mhm.
Now, always, the wild card in this is the Europeans and the British, who may swoop in and say, well, we don't care if it's an offer you can't refuse. We want to keep this thing going. But I don't think they can do that at this point. I think Trump has pulled off something absolutely amazing. And, the fact that you have key people, I mean, I know you all follow Kirill Dmitriev, the head of the Sovereign Wealth Fund for Russia and a confidant of Putin. His truths or tweets recently have been very pointed against the British. I mean, what you're really seeing is the kind of maturation of a serious strategy where more forces in the world. The Russians understand the problem is the British. I think you probably all saw that London Guardian article, which was a complete freakout over the fact that the Russians now see Britain as the number one enemy, not the United States. And the authors of the article were even compelled to go through their own sordid history of the great game, pitting Britain against Russia. So it's like all coming out, and the more the real battle lines, which is the sovereign nations of the world versus the empire, become clarified as opposed to some archaic communism versus capitalism or rules-based order versus authoritarian governments, all the crap that they've tried to peddle us for the past 20 or 30 years, perhaps just got buried with Dick Cheney. I don't know. And instead, you're actually seeing the real battle lines beginning to emerge, which again is sovereign nations versus empire with the Brits at the middle of it. And suddenly you're able to negotiate agreements that nobody thought were possible.
Right. Thank you, Susan. I'm just going to get my notebook so I can take notes. Alex, please carry on.
But why didn't you record this? Then you can.
I never thought of that. Then I could play it back and listen to it.
That's right.
Genius idea.
Okay. Well, whenever you need a piece of advice, Rich, never hesitate. I don't have a whole lot to add except that I find this quite amazing. If it is what it seems to be, and I have to put it that way because there's so much psyops going on, and apparently there's more than one version of this 28-point peace plan around. But I go by some of the tweets by Kirill Dmitriev, who said that this has been negotiated in secret, that it's on the basis of what has been agreed in Alaska, and that there's 4 categories to this peace plan, and one of them is it's not just about Ukraine. It's about defining a whole new security architecture for Europe, which is absolutely revolutionary. I mean, this completely upends the whole British system then. And then this is, coming from the Russians saying that we are very optimistic about implementing this. So if the Russians are optimistic, it means that, the two sides are understanding each other and that they're working well together. And then if you'll remember, just after the Alaska summit, Kirill Dmitriev tweeted something very interesting when he said, Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump will prevent World War III from breaking out. Will. Not might, could, should, can, will, which already kind of suggested that they understand the problem and that they're addressing it and that they're working on it. And now it appears that they've come to a framework of a workable solution. And then the Russians are saying we're optimistic about this. And then with regards to Europe and their balance sheets, the ECB on Wednesday issued like a really alarming sounding warning, which I was taken aback because normally the bankers, especially the central ones, go out of their way to say, everything's great, the system is solid, we're well funded, nothing to see here, please disperse, right? Now they're sounding the alarm, and it's not a nice reading. It's really a worrisome reading.
What did they say?
And then,
what did the ECB say?
Oh, risk of systemic disruptions. European banks are going to be facing a very challenging 3 years, and basically a lot of mumbo jumbo to say we're having liquidity issues and we have a shortage of collateral. So you know what that means? That means you print out of thin air and you create an inflation or hyperinflation. It means disintegration of the system. But it also means that it might be, European people might wake up one day to find that they can't take more than 100 euros a day out of the bank or something. Markets might close for days, weeks, months. Who knows what might happen? But it's so ugly that I've seen even this week Baroness Heather something published a report about the COVID response in the Telegraph. You may be aware, and her COVID response document is like 1,500 pages long. But basically, she's not like, this was a complete flop. This was one of the worst things that happened to humanity in history. Some people should be in prison, and here's the ones that should. The gist of her report is the government failed because they didn't implement it rigorously enough, fast enough. She's saying next time this happens, we have to be much more rigorous. We have to not hesitate. We have to go quick and hard. It's almost as though they are preparing for this again. And that has, last time that happened was when the repocalypse happened, in 2009. We had the massive repo crisis, and then boom, out of the blue, we get the pandemic.
Yeah, that was 2019, the repo crisis, late 2019.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so now we're having again liquidity problems. The Fed's in the repo business. The Bank of England is in the repo business. I assume that the European Central Bank is too. The holes are probably gaping and growing, and at some point they're going to have to do something very, very radical. If they can't have war against Russia, we might be going into lockdowns again. And last thing I want to say is that I still am waiting for the news about those $220 billion of Russian frozen assets, because I promise you, I think that one day they're going to say, oh, by the way, we're transferring all that money to the Fed, to the Federal Reserve, to the United States. And the Europeans are going to...
I was going to say, Alex, I hate to interject, but I want to ask you why you think that.
Because they will... Trump will want it. The Russians might want to do it because, their money's frozen. They can't access it at the moment, right?
Right.
The European Union is a vassal of the United States. They're going to have to do, like if Trump tells them transfer the damn money, they're going to have to transfer the money. It's going to bring Europe in such a desperate situation that they're going to have to agree to whatever. And then for the Russians...
If you're in the UK, actually anywhere, get a VPN. If you want to be able to access all sorts of perspectives that the government thinks are dangerous for you, get a VPN. nordvpn.com/cryptorich.
It's extremely important to cultivate good relations with the Americans. So if the money is going to sit somewhere frozen, it better be in the United States. And then that money can be used to fund projects together. Eventually, with goodwill, with the dropping of sanctions, with everything, they can get it back. They'll never get it back from the Bank of England. They'll never get it back from Paris. They're never going to get it back from Belgium.
Okay.
And for the same low price, they get to deliver a devastating blow to the European financial markets, and then they become they're going to have to make nice with the United States. They might have to make nice with the Russians as well.
Okay,
Alex, I was going to ask a question, just cycling back to what you said earlier in terms of the ECB report, and you said they see a very challenging 3 years. I mean, I'm assuming that's the 3 years of the rest of Donald Trump's terms, or is this some kind of financial cycle that they're talking about?
I don't know why they say 3 years. That's just in the bullet points that I read. I didn't read the whole document. Maybe it's the Trump admin. Maybe that's how they see it. That's entirely possible. And maybe they think they're going to get Hunter Biden back or Kamala Harris. Harris Biden ticket.
What I was going to say, actually, Alex, the other thing that pops into my head is that, remember, they're talking about introducing their digital euro by 2029. So this is now 3 years from when they introduce their digital euro, and then it can change their entire financial system, and they're having to deal with that in that challenging environment. The interesting thing you bring up about the Russian money, I think the best way to describe that $200 billion is what Putin said. It's the best money we'd never spent.
Is that what he said?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because that money is going to be a curse for the Europeans.
Yeah.
And then another effect of losing that collateral is going to be that it's going to severely weaken Macron, Merz, and Starmer governments.
Well, I don't think the Starmer government survives the next 60 days.
Right.
When he has to issue a warning to his cabinet, if you try to oust me, it's going to trigger a general election, which is what he said, to stay in power. He might as well be called, Vladimir Starmer or Volodymyr Starmer or, Keir Zelensky, because that's exactly the way he's staying in power. It's the same thing.
Oliver Starmer, maybe.
Oliver Starmer, whatever, however you want to put it. Pick your sobriquet of choice, right? Sobriquet. No, I'm a dirty American, sobriquet. So, if you think through that, like Macron is already on his last legs, Merz is already on his last legs. They're all staying in power because ultimately the ECB and the BOE and everybody else are running yield curve control programs in order to keep the financial markets from completely collapsing, right? But, again, the big question has been for a while now is if they can't get a war with, Europe, if they can't kill off a whole bunch of young men and destroy Europe by going into, an external war, then they start an internal war. And the internal war is the same internal war that they're fomenting here in the United States. You can see it coming, okay? White people versus Muslims. Let's not kid ourselves. It's what do you think all of this immigration is all about? I mean, if not to be that. So that's their fallback plan, because they have to have a cover story for why their markets collapse. So why they can do X, Y, and Z, why they can go to martial law. You've got Zelensky out there today screaming and they're like, "Oh my God!" And I don't know if anybody watched the little 5-minute thing he did earlier, trying to justify why this peace deal is not in his country's best interest. I'm like, dude, it's only because you want to stay in power, but it doesn't matter. Like, all the rats are leaving the sinking ship in Ukraine. They're all leaving. This deal is done. If I didn't see all of Zelensky's main backers, getting on planes and hijacking, hightailing it out of Kiev, I would be very, very skeptical about this 28-point deal. But if you look at the structure of it, it's very obvious that it's designed as it was designed by real diplomats. What do you need? What do you need? What do you need? Okay, you're all not going to get what you want, but you can all get 75% of what you want, or at least 60. Some of you have to, because you lost Ukraine. You get 50% of what you wanted, or 30% of what you wanted. The Russians won; they get 80% of what they wanted, and then we walk away. And then the bigger thing, and this is the other part that I found really interesting when I looked at the entire thing. Look at all the guarantees within that. Mm-hmm. Those points. All of those guarantees are predicated on, Ukraine can join the EU. Oh, NATO will enforce the peace, eventually, blah, 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 blah. Neither NATO nor the EU are going to survive 5 years if this peace plan goes into effect. That's what is driving the histrionics this morning in Kiev, why Zelensky's out trying to craft a new plan. And they didn't know, because their whole bubble, this thing was not just negotiated in secret. It was, it's obvious, because they had no idea what had actually been negotiated at this point. And then when they saw it, now the question, of course, is how was it leaked? Was it leaked by Kellogg because, he's always been a traitor within the Trump administration? Did Trump allow Kellogg, know full well that Kellogg would release it because he does actually work for the friggin' British, right? And then knowing full well, oh, look, here you go, another loyalty test, as Ian Burlingame would put it. Failed.
Oh, you
Or
saw
was
that
he-
you saw Kellogg is leaving in January.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there's your perfect, there's your answer. So,
Oh.
Bob, as the British would say, Bob's your uncle.
Indeed.
So
Bob
there
is
you go.
indeed your uncle, Uncle Bob. So that's all well and good. But our brave European and UK leaders have no hesitation sacrificing other people's children for the sake of their power and vainglory.
Especially French.
Sorry, Tom?
Especially if they're French.
Especially if they're French. That's right. So they're going to keep pushing for the war, and the peace plan isn't going to get agreed upon. Then what?
Do you think Zelensky has a choice at this point? So Joaquin Flores reported this morning. I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but my people like scour Joaquin's Telegram channel on a regular basis. There are multiple, and I mean multiple, 4-star generals and higher from the United States in Kiev right now, going over the books, going over the situation militarily in Ukraine. It's over. They've gone through. They want to know what the real numbers are. How many men are dead? How many are left? What battalions are surrounded? What their logistics look like? What their supply lines look like? How much money has been? All of it. The United States is going through the Ukrainians' books with a fine-tooth cattle prod from a military perspective, and therefore, if that is true, of course, it's big if true, then Zelensky has no choice. He can run the Macron all he wants. He can run the queer Stalin all he wants. It doesn't matter at this point because the Americans are in charge in Kiev.
Right. Thank you, Tom. And just on that, I interviewed Joaquin Flores.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, for the first time, and I hope to have him on again so people can find him on my new channel, Crypto Rich Politics. And I also want to just take this opportunity to remind people or let people know especially if you're in Britain, notaxforwar.com. So we can resist paying any local or central government fees as a protest against this drive to war. It is illegal to pay any tax. So you can check out that website and have a look, notaxforwar.com. Okay, Susan, please come in now.
Well, I think when you look at this from even beyond the Ukraine war, the situation in Europe, go to what Mark Carney said when he was at the ASEAN summit. He made a pretty amazing statement. He said the post-1989 rules-based liberal free trade system is over. He, who of course is the central banker's central bank, speaking obviously on behalf of this globalist financier elite, some of them are publicly admitting Trump has ended the post-1989 end of history Francis Fukuyama world, in which Western so-called liberal values are going to dominate the world in perpetuity and history will stop. Their system has stopped, not history. Because what Trump is doing with especially all of these amazing bilateral trade deals, it's amazing on numbers of levels. Number one, all of this bypasses the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, all of the institutions that have been used to actually throttle economic development in the post-war system. These are straight bilateral government-to-government deals. The latest one is the $1 trillion from Saudi Arabia. But it bypasses in the United States institutions like the Federal Reserve. Mm-hmm. Without Trump explicitly setting up a sovereign wealth fund, you're getting de facto that same kind of thing, where a huge amount of investment capital is coming into the United States and actually going into physical economic production, which from the standpoint of the British system is a no-no. Everything is supposed to simply be an income stream for the financial parasite. What Trump is doing is setting up these bilateral sovereign nation to sovereign nation agreements, which is what one of the things that Carney is referring to. Basically, their jig is up. And this money coming into the United States, it's going to cycle back to what Tom said in terms of, the danger of internal conflict. If we can force march this kind of economic development in the United States, where people are seeing the factories getting built, where the construction workers are employed right now, where people can send their kid to a trade school and actually end up with a well-paying job without $100,000 in debt. when people actually begin to get the sense that what Trump is doing is working, obviously you don't snap your finger and factories don't pop up like mushrooms. That takes 6 months, 9 months, a year. But a lot of this stuff is already happening. What you really have is a reassertion of a principle of sovereign nations, each working with each other, working out their problems, figuring out where they mutually benefit each other, without these supranational imperial globalist institutions sitting on top and setting the rules. As Carney said, their rules-based order is over.